The private elevator of Hartford Industrial's headquarters hummed to a halt on the underground level, rarely used, discreet, and exactly what Malcolm Hartford needed today. He adjusted the baseball cap on his head, glanced once more in the elevator mirror. Gone was the $3,000 suit, the sleek cufflinks, and boardroom aura. In their place, a weathered bomber jacket, grease-stained jeans, and steel-toe boots, borrowed from a prop department in the marketing division. He looked like any other middle-aged worker. Perfect. Outside the elevator, a nondescript black van waited. Two trusted advisors, sworn to secrecy, sat in the front. Neither asked questions when Malcolm ordered the unannounced visit. "I need to see it for myself," he'd said simply. "The ground level, the real thing." 2 hours later, Malcolm stood at the rust-bitten gates of Plant 14, one of the oldest manufacturing facilities still operating under the Hartford name. The security guard barely looked up. "ID?" Malcolm handed over a forged contractor badge. The guard squinted. "New guy?" Malcolm nodded. "Go on, sign in. They'll throw you on line 3. Inside, the air changed instantly. Humid, dense, saturated with the smell of oil and burnt metal. The floor buzzed with movement. Forklifts backing up with short beeps, clanging pipes, machines groaning under decades of wear. No greetings, no warmth, just workers moving with quiet precision, and the sharp bark of a floor manager echoing from a nearby stairwell. "Pick it up, let's go. No slacking, we've got quotas." Malcolm kept his head down. He walked slowly, absorbing everything: the faded safety posters, the cracked concrete, the exhausted eyes behind foggy protective glasses. He spotted a water fountain with rust stains and a vending machine blinking out of order. This was what the board never saw. This was what he hadn't seen in over 10 years. And then he saw her. A woman crouched beneath a jammed press unit, sleeves rolled up, thick gloves on, face partially hidden by a worn industrial mask. Her coveralls were smeared with grease, but her movements were precise. She spoke calmly to 2 younger workers hovering nearby. "Kill the secondary power." "I said secondary, not the main." "Good. Now hand me the 18 millimeters. The men obeyed without hesitation. She took the tool, twisted something under the housing, then leaned back. "Okay, restart in 10. If it grinds again, we'll strip it fully after the shift." One of the men stared at her, clearly impressed. "You sure you're not a damn wizard, Shay?" The woman pulled down her mask. Sweat gleamed on her dark skin. Her braids were tied into a neat knot, eyes sharp beneath arched brows. "Just a mechanic," she said with a dry smile. "With a memory better than the user manual?" Malcolm watched, intrigued. She moved like someone used to command, without arrogance, without needing a title, just competence, confidence, clarity. He tailed her discreetly through the next hour. She repaired a faulty lift sensor. She calmed a frightened temp who nearly cut his hand. She took photos of a leaking pipe, labeled them, and logged the issue into a cracked old tablet. Each time she made notes. Professional, thorough. But what caught Malcolm's attention most was when she walked straight up to a man in a too-clean jacket, arms crossed by the supervisor's office. "Danny," she said, arms folded, "that duct-over press row is giving off heat readings 30% above spec. We need a full maintenance cycle on the ventilation unit, or were risking chemical exposure during the night shifts. The man, Danny, snorted. "I don't have time for your overreactions today, Shay. Stick to your station." Shay's jaw clenched. "This isn't about me. It's about air quality, Danny. You've got people coughing through masks." "They always cough. It's a factory, not a spa." "If you don't fix it, I'll write the hazard report and send it directly to corporate," she said, voice cold now. "Let the big bosses see the photos I took, maybe OSHA too." Malcolm's eyebrows rose. Danny laughed. "And what? You think they'll actually read a complaint from a floor monkey? You don't even have a title. Go file your papers, Shay. It'll end up in the same trash bin as the last dozen." Shay stared at him, fire behind her eyes. Malcolm clenched his fists. He wanted to say something, anything, but that would blow his cover. So he stayed silent, watching. The moment passed. Shay turned on her heel and walked back toward the locker area, head held high. During the break, Malcolm made his way toward the far wall, pretending to check a maintenance cart. Shay sat alone on a bench, flipping through a manila folder she'd taken from her locker. Inside, documents, carefully stored in plastic sleeves. Malcolm drifted closer. A mechanical engineering degree from Howard University, a framed photo of her standing with a group of scholars at a STEM leadership event. Letters of recommendation from people with titles like Chief Engineer and Program Director. He cleared his throat. "Hey," he said casually, "you don't look like someone who should be here." Shay glanced up, cautious. "Excuse me?" He gestured to the folder. "That diploma, those letters. Why are you working as a floor tech in a place like this?" She stared at him for a second, trying to read him. Then she shrugged. "I applied for corporate roles 3 times. No replies. Maybe they don't like the name Shayla Dorsey, or maybe they don't think people like me belong in their fancy buildings." Malcolm's face remained neutral, but inside something churned. "You ever think about trying again?" "I did," she said quietly. "But after a while, you start to believe them, that you're just the help." He nodded slowly. "But you're not. That much is clear." She looked at him strangely, as if trying to place him. "I haven't seen you before," she said. "You knew?" "Just filling in. Contract work." He lied. "Name's Cal." "Well, Cal, you picked one hell of a factory to learn from." She stood, returning the folder to her locker. "But I'll give you one tip." He raised an eyebrow. "Keep your head down, and don't expect help from above." She left the break room. Malcolm stood there, absorbing her words. Then he pulled out his phone, typing a single message to his chief of staff. "Background check. Shayla Dorsey. Plant 14. Full file. Now." That night, Shay returned to her small apartment, unaware that her entire life had just shifted. At the same time, back in the Hartford Industrial HQ, Malcolm stood in his private office, reading her file under dim light. No complaints. Clean record. Rejected corporate applications without review, flagged as internal overqualification. One note from HR. Not a cultural fit. He closed the file, picked up his phone. "Schedule a meeting for Shayla Dorsey," he said. "In person. Tomorrow morning. Full access pass. Use my name." A pause. "And send someone down to Plant 14. Quietly start an audit." Shayla Dorsey almost deleted the email. The subject line, "Meeting request, Hartford HQ, a.m. tomorrow looked like a mistake. The sender? A direct line from the executive floor, the same floor that had never returned a single one of her carefully written applications. She stared at the screen in disbelief. At first, she suspected a prank. Then maybe some sort of HR formality, a mass update or compliance thing. But when she reread it and noticed the bottom line, "You have been scheduled for a private meeting with CEO Malcolm Hartford," her stomach flipped. The Malcolm Hartford, the man at the top of the pyramid, a billionaire who hadn't been seen inside a factory in over a decade. Her eyes narrowed. It had to be a mistake. The next morning she hesitated outside the headquarters building. Polished steel, curved glass, a rotating lobby door that looked like it could reject you on personality alone. She wore her best blazer, pressed pants, clean boots, hair pulled back into a braid. Her resume folder was tucked under her arm like a shield. The receptionist didn't blink when she gave her name. "We've been expecting you, Ms. Dorsey." What? A security badge, temporary, but full access, was clipped to her jacket. The elevator shot up 47 floors. Shay gripped the handle of her folder so tightly her knuckles turned white. When the doors opened, she stepped into a space that looked like another world. Soft lighting, carpet that absorbed sound, walls of frosted glass and tasteful art. A curved desk where an assistant greeted her with a perfect smile. "Right this way. He's waiting for you." He? Not HR? Not a team? Just him? The office was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the skyline. On the far side, a man in a dark suit stood with his back to her, hands clasped. When he turned, Shay gasped. It was him, the guy from the factory, the man who said his name was Cal. Now, clean-shaven, suited, commanding. Malcolm Hartford. She froze. "You—" Her voice caught in her throat. "You lied." He stepped forward. Calm, no arrogance, just gravity. "I didn't lie," he said. "I watched." Shay's heart pounded. "Why? What kind of game is this?" "It's not a game." He gestured to a chair. "Please, sit." She stayed standing. Malcolm didn't press her. He spoke evenly. "I visited Plant 14 because I needed to see what we've been ignoring. I didn't want a red carpet. I didn't want stage tours. I wanted the truth. And you decided to spy on us." "I decided to listen," he corrected, "for the first time in too long." Silence. Then he added, more softly, "And what I saw was someone doing the job better than anyone with 10 titles and triple the salary." Shay looked at him, skepticism battling curiosity. "Why am I here?" "Because you saved us. That press unit you repaired, it was days from a mechanical failure that would have triggered a chain reaction, halted production, endangered workers, cost us $500,000 in downtime." He walked behind the desk, pressed a button. A screen lit up behind him, showing footage from a security camera in the factory. Shay's own figure, tiny but unmistakable, guiding others, fixing systems, flagging safety violations. "You shouldn't be ignored," he said. "You should be leading." Shay finally sat, slowly, cautiously. "I applied to your company 3 times, she said. "I had better grades than most of your junior engineers. I had letters, awards, and all I got was silence." "I know," he said. "I read your file last night. I read the HR notes." Her jaw tightened. "Let me guess. Not a good fit?" Too intense, maybe even aggressive. That's what they always say when you're a black woman who doesn't smile through condescension. Malcolm didn't argue. "I'm not going to defend their decision," he said. "I'm going to change it." He slid a folder across the desk. "Chief Safety Engineer for all 14 domestic plants. Full authority to inspect, report, and restructure safety and operations. Direct access to my office. Salary package included." Shay didn't move. "This is a setup," she whispered. "It's not. You don't even know me." "I know what I saw," he replied, "and I trust my own eyes more than a filtered resume pool." She picked up the folder, opened it, looked at the numbers. Her throat tightened. "I've worked double shifts with broken fans and supervisors who wouldn't approve $10 parts," she said. "Now you're handing me 6 figures and a team? I'm giving you the keys to fix what others ignored." Shay stood again, folder in hand. "And what about Danny?" Malcolm's face darkened. "Fired, as of 2 hours ago. Internal review confirmed multiple code violations and intimidation reports." She blinked. "You're serious?" "I don't do this halfway," he said, "and I don't promote people out of guilt. I promote results. Yours speak louder than any legacy name on my board." By the end of the hour, she walked out with an ID badge that still didn't feel real. When she reached the sidewalk, she stood frozen under the sun. City horns blared. People passed by. The world didn't know it had just changed. She did. 2 weeks later, Shay returned to Plant 14, but not through the service gate. She walked through the front, in a tailored blazer and safety regulation boots, clipboard in hand. This time, every eye turned to her, not with dismissal, but confusion, respect, even fear. She stopped in the center of the factory floor. A few older workers straightened up. Someone whispered, "That's Shay." She turned to the foreman. "Gather the safety crew. Audit starts in 10. "Yes, ma'am." And just like that, the room moved. People obeyed. She was no longer the invisible mechanic. She was the voice of the standard. In the weeks that followed, ventilation systems were upgraded, protective gear was replaced, training programs launched. Shay personally conducted workshops at 5 other plants, starting each one with the same sentence. "You're not just workers, you're the spine of this company, and spines break when they're ignored." Malcolm watched her growth from afar. No press releases, no photo ops, just results. But one morning, he entered a newly built training center, one she designed herself. A sign hung over the entryway, the Shayla Dorsey Institute for Safety and Leadership. Inside, a dozen young apprentices in crisp coveralls listened intently as Shay explained emergency protocol. She paused when she saw Malcolm enter, but she didn't stop. Instead, she finished her point and then walked toward him, smiling. "You came. I wouldn't miss it." The room was quiet. "You want to say something to the group?" she asked. He looked around, eager eyes, clean tools, fresh notebooks. "No," he said. "You're the one they should be listening to." Shay nodded, then turned back to her trainees. "This job isn't about titles," she said. "It's about responsibility. Leadership isn't about being loud. It's about showing up, even when no one's watching." A beat. "Now, let's talk about what to do when someone tries to tell you your voice doesn't matter." The day Shay's name was etched in metal, she almost cried. She stood in the lobby of the newly unveiled Hartford Safety and Innovation Center, surrounded by polished tile, light-infused atriums, and rows of young apprentices, many of whom looked like she once did. Behind her, a brushed chrome plaque read, Shayla Dorsey, Chief Safety Engineer, Lead, Protect, Rise. It felt surreal. Just a year ago, she was patching leaking pipes with duct tape while a lazy supervisor called her dramatic. Now she sat in quarterly leadership meetings, ran her own interplant inspection division, and piloted a safety retraining initiative adopted by the National Union. She didn't take it for granted, and she didn't forget where she came from. But today wasn't about titles. Today was about legacy. In 1 hour, Shay would give the keynote address at the first National Workforce Leadership Summit, hosted, ironically, by Hartford Industrial in partnership with federal safety boards and state labor commissions. It was the first time the summit wasn't chaired by a CEO. It was the first time the chair was a black woman. It was the first time that woman used to mop oil spills before she was ever handed a microphone. 30 minutes, said Lila, her assistant. Press is already filing in. Shay nodded and continued reviewing her speech. Not that she needed it. She'd lived it. Her fingers traced the edge of a small photo she kept inside the folder. A younger Shay, fresh out of Howard, grinning with a diploma in hand. Next to her was a woman in scrubs, her mother. The caption she'd written beneath it, for her, and every woman who came before her. There was a knock. She looked up. Malcolm Hartford stood in the doorway. No entourage, no cameras. May I? She smiled. Always. He entered quietly, his pace slower than before, shoulders slightly rounded with age, but calmer, lighter. You ready? He asked. I've been ready since they said I wasn't, she replied. He chuckled. You're going to be quoted in every labor journal by tomorrow. I don't do it for the quotes, she said. I do it for the girl who thought she wasn't allowed to want more. Malcolm nodded. The work you've done in a year? I've never seen anything like it. Not from any executive. You changed our numbers, our culture, and me. She didn't reply. I'll be in the back row, he added. I know, she said. You belong there, and I mean that in the best way. The lights dimmed in the main hall. Over 400 people filled the space. Engineers, union reps, plant leads, media. Banners of innovation hung from the ceiling. A camera crew from PBS hovered stage left. The host took the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker, a woman who rose from the factory floor to transform an entire company. The applause began before the sentence finished. Chief Safety Engineer of Hartford Industrial, Ms. Shayla Dorsey. She stepped out, slow but steady. The podium stood like a sentry in the center of the stage. The lights made her blink, but the crowd didn't make her falter. She cleared her throat and began. When I started at Plant 14, she said, I wasn't supposed to talk too much. I was supposed to do my job, keep quiet, and never look too long at the problems nobody wanted to fix. Soft laughter, rueful nods. I had a degree, a stack of awards. A resume, they said, looked too ambitious. But the only thing I needed to bring into that factory was a hard hat and humility. She paced once, measured. I learned something real on that floor. I learned that titles don't make leaders. Listening does. Murmurs of agreement. I spoke up and got laughed at. I filed reports. They vanished. I fixed systems. Others took credit. I thought I was alone. She looked out at the faces, many of them nodding. But I wasn't. I was surrounded by others, black women, Latino men, immigrants, veterans, folks who held entire production lines on their backs, yet were treated like footnotes. She paused, until someone finally paid attention. A beat. And the irony? That person was wearing a disguise. There was laughter. A few people looked toward the back row. Yes, our CEO showed up undercover. Yes, I called out my supervisor in front of him. And no, I didn't apologize for it. The crowd laughed louder now. But what came after that? That's the part that matters. She held up a report. 14 plants, 0 safety violations in the last quarter, 37 promotions from the factory floor, a 52% increase in internal mobility applications approved instead of ignored. Applause. And all of that happened because people at the top chose to believe people at the bottom. Her voice softened. But I'm not here to talk about numbers. She looked directly into the camera lens. I'm here to tell the girl watching this, who just got told she's too smart to be liked or too direct to be promoted. I see you. Keep speaking. She turned to the workers in the crowd. And I'm here to tell every person who's ever been passed over, dismissed, or told to stay in their lane. You are the lane. Without you, nothing moves. The room was still until it wasn't. Standing ovation all at once. Shay stood still, overwhelmed, but this time she let herself feel it, not because she needed validation, because she had earned it. After the speech, Malcolm approached slowly. That was, he began. She cut him off, smiling. I know. They both laughed. Then he handed her a small envelope. What's this? A surprise. One more thing. Inside was a letter, on crisp parchment. It bore the seal of the U.S. Department of Labor. Shay read it silently. Her hands began to shake. You didn't... I nominated you 3 months ago, Malcolm said. They just confirmed it yesterday. The letter read, United States Department of Labor Distinguished Award for Workplace Transformation and Equity recipient, Shayla Dorsey. She looked up at him, stunned. This is federal. He nodded. You made policy-level change. You inspired multiple companies to audit their internal systems. You've been cited in 3 studies already. This isn't about me, Shay. You're not just one of the best leaders I've ever seen. You're history in the making. She looked down at the plaque still clutched in her hand. I never wanted awards. No, he said. You wanted respect, and now you've got both. That night, back at her apartment, she stood at the window and looked at the city lights. On her desk sat the old photo of her and her mother. Next to it, the new award, the framed summit banner, her updated business card. Shayla Dorsey, Chief Safety Engineer, Hartford Industrial. She smiled. Then she took out a notebook and scribbled something new. Next step, build mentorship program. Start with the girls. Start early. Build louder voices. She paused, then underlined it twice. 6 months later, in the south side of Chicago, a group of teenage girls sat inside a converted classroom. The walls were covered in blueprints, safety gear, and photos of engineers from every background. At the front of the room stood Shay, dressed in her signature black blazer and factory boots. She gestured toward the board behind her, where her name was printed in large block letters. "This is who I am now," she said, "but I started where you are, and I stayed in places that didn't want me until I made them see me." A girl raised her hand. "Do you ever wish you did something else?" Shay paused, smiled gently. "No," she said, "because now I'm the kind of leader I needed when I was your age." And as she looked at the wide eyes before her, brown, black, brilliant, she knew they would remember her name, not because it was on a door, but because it opened doors for others.